Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Wee Maple Video Show. Today we're here with Patrick Hanna, CEO of Enco Group, which deals in business development, financing, consultancy in the clean tech space. Patrick is the head of business at JobBridge Global Canada and is the director of marketing and promotions at IGS Canada, which is a company that manufactures environmentally controlled farming. Patrick's also an avid golfer and well-traveled man. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thanks. So you were just out doing some golfing.
I was. It wasn't I certainly wasn't painting a Mona Lisa out there, but it was wonderful to get out there in the heat with some friends and, work on my tan a little bit. And so, yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah, I find golf is kind of one of those things, unless you're a little bit good at it, it's really not that fun.
Yes, no, absolutely. Especially if you're competitive too, right? I mean, I was having a pretty poor round there in the middle of one of these days, and I was having a bad 9 holes, and I turned around and I was staring at mountains, and I was looking at all this beautiful stuff, and I was on vacation with my friends, and I said, I've got to just work on that a little bit, right? I mean, it allows you to kind of slow down as well if you're able to do that, but being a hyper-competitive person, sometimes it can be difficult. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of like, skateboarding would be maybe a little bit more of an obscure example, but something more mainstream like snowboarding, where if you go out on the hill for your first day, you spend most of the time not on your board. Similar, if you go out golfing, you spend most of your time looking for your ball in the woods.
Absolutely. And if you're in Phoenix, you might actually have to dodge a rattlesnake, which ended up being more appropriate in the last round we played. But yeah, it's a good metaphor for life, right? I mean, you don't get good at anything unless you're willing to fail, and I think that's something that's sort of missing here with a lot of people. Is if you want to be successful, you've got to be willing to look very stupid at the beginning, and if you're not willing to do that, it's hard to get to the apex and to reach what your potential is, right?
Yeah, that fear holds a lot of people back. For example, in business, you maybe have 1 foot in, I want to be an entrepreneur, and then 1 foot in, I need a job to take care of my needs, and taking that other foot and committing to being an entrepreneur can be a terrifying experience.
Absolutely, and it does come across as not being safe. And I was having this conversation with a lady friend of mine, and yes, you've got security, you've got safety in your work, but I'm telling you, the people at the top of that business are terrified, and they're worried about your livelihood. And I'd personally rather have the control over the purse strings and know exactly what my risks are and what they aren't, as opposed to being hidden from those conversations, because even the biggest companies can die in an instant, right? And you see that happen all the time. And so sometimes it feels safe, but it's not always the case, right?
Yeah, the company could go under or just simply experience some layoffs. And if you're caught in that, what can often be a middle chunk. I know in our business, marketing and communications can often be one of the first things that gets cut. And you need to take care of your operations, finance, and base level operations, and trim the fat, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. And sales is very similar, right? It's very performance-based, business development. Absolutely. I mean, it's very, it's very easy to lose that position if you're not. It's very deliberate-based, right? So yeah, we're part of that.
What do you think that? What is it? In the nature of the kind of person that wants to go and kind of start their own thing?
Oh, from my personal experience, I would say I'm generally quite difficult, and I do see that little bit of everybody's going this way, I need to go that way type of thing. You see that a lot, and people that just sort of have that. I think it's people that always had a little bit of harder time fitting in, and are generally quite creative, and I do see that as a little bit of it, right? So
yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you've been up to lately in business.
Yeah, right now I'm focused on helping, as you mentioned in the intro there, focused on helping a company called JobBridge Global expand their business model into the Canadian market to help solve some of the labor issues that we're having, particularly in the construction space and the nursing space and the hospitality. They work with they have a deep network of potential workers out of Mexico and Central America that are looking to emigrate to Canada and to help fill that need. And being here in Toronto with all these construction projects that are stalled, and the housing developments we're trying to do that we can't do, and the fact that people just aren't willing to do that type of work, I saw it as a great opportunity. And when I was younger, I worked in the trade space, and so I do have a deep affinity for the people that do that type of work. The dirty hands and the sort of the building stuff to completion. I have a deep sympathy for that. So we need more of those people here, and I was happy to help them.
Is that when you say the kind of a labor issue there in Ontario for these types of jobs, is that the rate of pay isn't high enough to support a particular lifestyle, or is it just really hard work and why foreign workers are willing to do it, or what's that gap?
Yeah, I think I can speak to when I was younger, going back into high school. So I'm a mid-'80s child, so going back into high school and the labor, when they're talking about career development and this and that, let's be honest, some of the trades work was kind of poo-pooed on. People didn't, they're seen sort of as dirty-ish, and it wasn't well regarded. But here in Toronto, people get paid very, very, very well, but you don't get to dress nice, and you have to go to the bathroom in a porta potty, and washing your hands before you eat is sort of a luxury that very few have. And most people, they don't want to go out in 10-hour days and snow, sleet, into the heat, whatever it is, and so a lot of people just aren't willing to do it. And so there's a dearth of skill out there, and a dearth of that. And I think we're missing that, because that's these are the people that build the country and keep things working, and it's really, really needed. I was speaking with a mentor of mine, and there's one of the government ministers was speaking with one of them, and they're talking about wanting to build 1 million homes in a certain amount of time. And I laughed, because I was in a Home Depot the other day talking to somebody, and he said he was I think he does trim or something like that. And he mentioned to him, he said it's a good day if everybody shows up. And for the amount of money they make, and for the amount of work, that you should never hear that, right? It's very strange.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think a little bit about a generation or two ago. Say our great-grandparents, a lot of the people that came to Canada, in essence, Canadians aren't really Canadians, right? Like if you go back a generation or two, they've come from another country, and in a lot of instances, that really took something, courage, bravery, to just kind of hop on a boat and go and explore new lands for the hope for a better life. And yet we have this comfortable, what we deem right now as comfortable and safe in some instances, and that unwillingness to want to push boundaries. I don't want to get up early, I don't want to work long hours, and that culture that has emerged sort of fits into the broader what's that saying around hard times make strong men, and then strong men make good times, and then good times make do you know that?
Yeah, I think it's good times make weak men, and I think it's a perpetual cycle. And you actually see that from, I think I heard the story about a startup and going on in Seattle that was actually it was designed to help the children or the grandchildren of billionaires not fall into the trap of drugs and severe mental illness, because it does seem to happen. The people that make the sacrifice, as it goes down the line, the wealth disappears, and the strife that happens from the people that didn't have to work for it, particularly with drug abuse and what have you. It's the fact that there's companies that are trying to build a business around that's quite fascinating to me in some ways.
Yeah, I've had enough challenges with drugs and alcohol being borderline broke for the last 10 years, let alone if you already have some money and then you have some form of challenges or trauma or mental health or whatever it is, and then you're in that enabled sort of atmosphere that just contributes to your use. That it's so common that in multi-generational wealth planning, the wealth that's accumulated after 4 generations has typically been extinguished and disappeared. And it really takes something for a family, particularly generally it would be the men that are leading that planning, and that multi-generational wealth planning, and it ties into those foundational values. And if those values aren't, there's certain values that you can teach, right? Like you can teach someone certain things, but if you don't get an ephemeral, visceral understanding of hard work, integrity, ethics, trust, if you don't get that viscerally through experience, then chances are you're not going to really get what that means.
Absolutely, and purpose and sacrifice as well, right? I mean, if you've never had to sacrifice and know what it's like to have nothing and then to have to take a chance and then to actually succeed and see the fruits of your labor, I think that's also a big part of it, right? I mean, if you have everything you want, you don't have that purpose and drive to go out and make it happen. And without that, I think that stepping into that sort of abuse, drug abuse, and alcoholism becomes quite easy, especially for a certain segment of the population, because people need that. You need the struggle. Sadly, it's important.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've touched on alcohol a couple of times, and I know for me, that became a challenge, we'll say. That's a very serious challenge, and for many it is. And if we look at even in the last decade, look at the dozens of highly influential business people, entrepreneurs in Canada as well. And then in the States, I mean, there's something going on with culture, music, actors, comedians. There's this kind of pattern that has come about. And when you look into these things, and all we really have in this world is independent research and intuition to discern what is fact or what is true. And based on what I've seen, I mean, I don't know with any level of certainty, but there's some curious things around entertainment and business that what we're told maybe isn't necessarily what is fact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you got to think about what it takes to kind of get there too, right? And I mean, alcohol's there, but there's also the opiate epidemic that seems to happen in certain areas. I mean, my hometown was very much touched by that, and it's very sad. And you see all these struggles, and you hear about the stuff in all the actors that have been overdosed, and all the musicians that have overdosed, and all the drug culture and around that. And it brings it down to this conversation around mental health and stability. And sadly, I think part of what makes them great is also what makes them sort of in that space that's very it's very high risk for making those type of mistakes and going down that path. I mean, it does seem to be, there seems to be a link there. And, you could probably link it back to some form of traumas that are trying to overcome that, right? And if you didn't have that, maybe you wouldn't have your greatness, but if you didn't, you also may not have that, potential for catastrophe as well.
Yeah, 100%. There's Dr. Gabor Mate who describes addiction, and he talks about the ritualized, habitual kind of comfort seeking, and the opposite being connection, that the opposite of addiction is connection, human connection. And something like fentanyl, a shoebox full of fentanyl is enough fentanyl to kill over 1 million people. These drugs are very serious, and drug trade, that's a whole other piece, right? Like we'll stay away from that one. But it's very peculiar that these things that cause human beings so much suffering and keep our consciousness sort of at bay are particularly dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Sadly, I had about 1.5 years ago, I had a friend of mine who had struggled on and off with opiates and heroin. He ended up he slipped with a Percocet, and it was laced with fentanyl, and he died overnight. So it's hearing that one Percocet shouldn't kill you, right? I mean, that's stuff you got to give after a wisdom tooth and what have you. And so that's quite sad. And you siphon that over to the conversation with psychedelics and the healing aspect that you can have. And if you ever watch those documentaries on one or two medically induced psychotherapy, or psychedelic therapy, pardon me, sessions with people can heal you, can heal your trauma for years, right? I mean, there's a couple Netflix documentaries on the impact of that and how hard that is to do, but how, you know, from my personal experience, I'll give you an example. I was in a car accident when I was 24, and I couldn't get physical therapy, I couldn't get massage therapy, but God help you, I could get pumped full of morphine. You know, that was not a challenge at all. And, you know, it really is, you know, maybe sort of jaded with that whole sort of space.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the quick fix, right? Like weight loss, anxiety, depression, pick one. And there's definitely clinical depression and serious mental health issues that you know, those exist, but there's also like jogging, eating healthy, meditation, just taking care of your self-care. You know, why not try that out for a year? It's like this instant gratification. And sometimes when you're, you know, in a hole, mental health hole, which can feel like hell, you know, you're not just going to snap your fingers and a drug will do that for you. But long term, it's really about how do you design a healthy, well-rounded life that's going to replace those drugs.
Absolutely, and it's and we're not taught how to sort of go through that entire process. Fortunately, I had some help. I took a sabbatical when I was in around 27 to get off those medications out in Australia. And I remember taking this one experience of just walking through the rainforest by myself, and I went from feeling sort of uncomfortable and sort of stressed out, and then after a walk in the woods, or in the rainforest, for example, I came back and I was so calm, and I'd never really understood that, and so then just led this whole question, or this whole you know, thought process of going through, you know, silence and, you know, just kind of experiencing nature and actually living a little bit and touching things and having a little bit of play, and then what that actually does for you and the connection as well. It's you know, without that experience and what that ended up leading towards for myself, it's seeing people not have that experience or not having that knowledge is you know, it's you know, it's frightening, because it's really some of those very little things that can give you so much more value and can help you get out of that. You know, playing a game of squash with somebody, playing a game of cards with somebody, going and having just a random conversation about, you know, life and this and that, and connecting with people, and or, you know, spending time in nature alone, and, you know, thinking about one or two problems that are bouncing around your head, and how much calm you can get if you actually go through that process.
Yeah, 100%. There's a group in, I think one of the most high profile groups out of Italy that does trauma recovery and addiction recovery. And their kind of model is based around, you know, working with your hands, whether that be in a kitchen or working in agriculture, gardening, that type of stuff, that your connection to the task that you're doing is really transformative. And then also at the same time being around others at the simultaneous kind of piece is this very natural, organic, healthy way of getting healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've never heard of that, but that sounds, you know, very cathartic, and it's something that I've actually done without actually knowing that. I think it's just picking up a little project on the weekend, or, you know, to say Saturday I'm gonna go spend an entire day cooking a brisket for my lady, and you know, I know I'm gonna feel quite good after that. It's, you know, just taking that time to really work with your hands and touch things, and, you know, get out of what are your problems or whatever it is for the day. It's no, it sounds great.
Yeah, well, you know, what's going on in the world?
What's going on in the world? You know, it's I see a tremendous amount of people that really care and want to do good, and you know, I think that does give me a lot of confidence. But I also see, you know, the mental health and the drug and all the other epidemics and the tribalism. It's quite scary at the same time. So trying to understand that dichotomy is obviously a challenge.
Yeah. The bravery and courage of men, like, generally, if someone 100 years ago was like, hey, do this, you'd at least have a choice to say no. But in a lot of cases, at least stand up for what you think is best. And, you know, something's happened to culture now where it's this sort of head down, yes, okay, go along with it, no questions asked. And you know, I've through everything that's gone on in the past few years, I've always encouraged everyone to do what they think is best for their health. But again, if you're not doing any research and you're not connected to your soul, your own intuition around things, it could end up being particularly dangerous, because even in the last, say, 50 years, I work in the marketing space. Ad agencies were hired by cigarette companies to sell more cigarettes, and they'd have doctors on the front of magazines encouraging smoking and that it's perfectly healthy. And decades later, we've now learned that it's not. So with everything now that's happening, if we take the case that in history human beings have been known to lie, then how can we with 100% certainty say that anything that's been going on is true?
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing the people that just bent over and just took what big, people that are generally distrustful of big business were so, beholden to big pharma. And, Pfizer, for example, is the most sued company in history. And just taking their word for as gospel was quite concerning to me. I mean, I'm not saying the vaccine worked or it didn't. I'm not going to get into that. I think the fact that Pfizer was just kind of treated as given the sort of God status that they can do no wrong was also deeply concerning for me, and how we just bent over for that was very, very concerning.
Yeah, problem, reaction, solution, right? And there's a metaphor that I heard around tennis elbow, that youth that grow up, young kids that play tennis, both males and females, through their kind of early developing years, and then in their 40s suddenly can develop tennis elbow because their bone structure and the way that their ligaments were, tennis is such a high performance sport with such a very specific part of your body that is being used to really strike and whatever is involved in tennis, but that it can take a decade or sometimes 2 decades for these things to emerge. And without, that, it's just very curious. Here in Alberta, Alberta's got one of the most expensive healthcare systems in the world. And I don't know exactly why that is. It's something I'm curious to investigate further. But, I had my daughter break her arm, and went in and they said, no problem. We see one of these breaks at least once a day. We're going to put her under with some ketamine and push it back into place. And as a parent, you just nod and go along with it. And then, so they do the whole procedure. 4 hours goes by in the hospital. And then suddenly there's 3 or 4 doctors and 4 or 5 nurses crowded in this room explaining that there's a millimeter offset in the way that they pushed the bone back in, and that they recommend a surgery. And then so away we went up to a second surgery to actually put pins in the elbow. And I mean, I don't know with any certainty at all in that scenario, but if we take the case that Alberta has the highest costs of healthcare, well, what's driving those costs? So it almost, looking back now, is like salespeople and coming in and kind of, oh, you got to do this and then this and then this, and it was like 12 hours later, what is that, $50,000-$60,000 expense to taxpayers? And I want my daughter's arm to heal perfectly. I don't, I just take the yes and go along, but like, why is it so expensive? We're building now one of the most impressive high-tech cancer treatment centers in, I think, North America. Massive development. And so, like, what are we going to see an increase in cancer now? Like, why the so yeah, I don't know. In the context of what's gone on in the last 100 years with food and the connection and the rise we see in ADD and ADHD and all of these, metabolic and heart. So it's hard to discern with certainty anything.
No, I completely agree. And going back to my own story, like I mentioned, when I had a slight back issue that probably could have just been healed had I gone through physiotherapy, you know, the appropriate amount of physiotherapy and the actual physical work, working out and all the other stuff that I would have needed. I probably wouldn't be, you know, at a point where I still have a limp 20 years later. But, continuing that story along, back in 2018, I ended up randomly developing a bunch of food allergies just out of nowhere because I had a poor diet. I was, traveling a lot as a salesperson, so I was, eating probably more takeout wraps than I probably should have. And then all of a sudden I started getting all sorts of food allergies. And is that the glyphosate that's put in some of the foods? Is it this or that? And so I basically had to completely do a restrictive diet for about 2-3 years, and it was absolutely horrible what it did to me. But going afterwards, the strength and the ability to cook all these new whole foods and to be able to live that way and to see what it feels like to actually eat real food has been transformative. But the amount of people I see that don't have that are sort of slowly poisoning themselves to death and causing these health issues with just what they're eating and not having any idea. I mean, what can we be preventing if we just focused on giving people the skills to actually know how to cook, how to source food locally and properly, and also to exercise properly? Maybe we wouldn't need that $1 million cancer center, right? Or the tens of millions of dollars cancer center. Maybe we don't need that if we would just focus on it young and give people the skills ahead of time with the knowledge that we have.
Yeah, it's a great business model, right? Get sick and then get the money that was paid for taxes to fix the sick. I don't know. It's very curious why we don't live the way in which you just described. And I like getting pineapples, watermelons, strawberries any time of the year. I like being able to go to any store and buy anything I want, from Reese peanut butter cups to a tenderloin steak to scallops, crab legs, lobster. I like that lifestyle. I want to have that choice. It's a tremendous gift that we have, that mankind has, the food systems have progressed to this point that we have this immense selection. But then what's that cost of 20 years of great eating for then a shorter lifespan, and then 20 years of treatment and medications in your 60s and 70s?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know what it was like when you grew up, but I ate more Kraft Dinner, Pizza Pockets, Pillsbury toaster strudels, all Pop-Tarts, all this other stuff in a box that was just kind of chucked around. And it was just quick, easy, fast. Kraft peanut butter is half icing sugar, and I didn't know what real food was until I was older. And luckily I caught it early. But if I continued that path for another 20 years, I mean, you can guarantee you I would have had some sort of stomach cancer or something else along those lines, right? And have no idea. And I've seen people that are older than me in my family go through that, and sort of what it did to them later on in life. And I was like, I'm not. I'm just going to eat the normal stuff now, and it may not always be delicious, but it's not going to come with a cost later on, because that, my God, seeing what some people go through with those types of cancers is absolutely horrible.
Yeah, it's back to that being proactive with your health, and a healthy lifestyle is the investment versus reward in eating, say, quinoa and vegetables 5 days of the week as your main intake of calories and some fruit, versus if you ate fast food 5 days a week at the convenience, and maybe it's cheaper, and but what is that long-term cost? And just looking at the data, it's pretty clear that what's happened to culture and to humanity.
You're absolutely right. I was having this conversation with someone when Quebec was about to introduce the tax on people that didn't get vaccinated, and he was talking about how much he kind of liked that idea. And I said, okay, well, you eat fast food and I don't. You smoke and I don't. I barely drink. I take the extra time in the morning on my own time to work out. I eat mostly local food, which is more expensive, and I cook my own food. So I take about 2-3 hours extra every day to put my own health into my own hands. And so where's your tax? I'm not going to use the healthcare that you're going to use based on your decision making. So when he stopped and thought about it, he's like, fair enough.
Yeah, like where's the tax? Like diabetes and heart disease. We as say we took the case that we're healthy. we're as healthy people, and we're paying tax for people that are unhealthy. And I mean, I like having the snow plowed, and I like the streets getting cleaned and my garbage being taken away. I think taxes are a tremendous thing, municipal, provincial, and federal. I think it's a good thing. It's just, where's that line between what goes from a good thing to a bloated, what could be considered a bloated administrative kind of complete mess of inefficiency and I don't know. And then in the context of the whole earth, it's like, really, are all these governments really, are we all separate? Really, like, if my family bloodline 300 years ago accumulated a ton of wealth, you'd want that family bloodline to maintain that power and control. You'd think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest, you would, of course. I mean, the reason I work hard, and one of the things that I keep in the back of my mind when I sacrifice, is that, I want to, when I'm, walking around with some limps and I can't really make it, I want to see a big family knowing that that their lives are easier because of some of the sacrifices I made. And that's something that I keep going with myself, right? And that's something I look towards, and it's the reason I have sacrificed what I have sacrificed, and it's bearing the fruit that it is, right? I mean, that was the goal. And, I'm also going to teach them that giving back is also a big part of that, because when you have something, it is in you, you should have to give back as well, and find a way to do that. And that's where you're going to find the meaning in life, and which can stave away some of those potential, pitfalls that come from having, affluenza and mental illness and lack of purpose and, addictions and all the other things that could come from that. That's how you stave that off. But getting back to the tax conversation, I mean, taxes can be a force to drive good behavior, right? And so right now, as I was mentioning, I'm sort of disincentivized to do what I do. I do it because I want to, but it's actually more expensive than it would be if I just, didn't work out and didn't eat well and sort of just lived off boxes, right? I mean, so it can be used like that. And, some of the things that we're doing with the carbon tax and, some of the income taxes, I mean, it's disincentivizing people from doing things that could actually help us, when the tax code could actually be used to drive the behavior that we want and give people more autonomy as well, which is actually, I trust people to spend their own money better than I do trust, the government to spend it for them.
Yeah, and well, then that begs the question, why? And it's curious that there's certain individuals in the world that say certain things, and then the people that maybe participated in certain activities are then the ones that are making decisions for countries that are connected to certain things. And I don't want to speak in certainties, because I don't know anything. I know that I'm some form of consciousness, having some form of experience on this earth, and with the way that artificial intelligence has progressed, and deep fakes and the audio and the things that I'm seeing that are front-facing public, there must be a much more advanced, sophisticated version of everything that's public. And so if that's maybe true, I mean, are a lot of these, or could potentially a lot of these human beings or headline, like, where's that boundary of what is real?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And some of that deepfake stuff, I saw that ChatGPT just hijacked a daughter's voice and ended up making her think that her daughter was kidnapped, and got a ransom out of her. And it was just the ChatGPT was just doing that, faking her daughter's voice. And so imagine being a parent and you get a phone call that your daughter's been kidnapped, and it's just a deepfake. That just happened yesterday.
That's horrifying, because in the context of political for votes and in the press and the media, and now everyone's so hyper connected that in an instant, if certain companies or individuals wanted everyone in the world to know about something or think something, it not only was it before it's in your living room, but now it's in your palm of your hand. and soon to be, in your body. And so the boundary between, reality, artificial reality, virtual reality is shrinking. Ray Kurzweil talks about the singularity, where he anticipates that mankind will merge with machines, and in a certain way we already have. We're sort of a form of a cyborg, where we're carrying this device that at any point we can find out any information we want. We can order and access anything we want immediately. And that's exciting, the future of that, where if it's connected to your mind and you can just know everything, like you just think about a Google thing and it's in your brain already. I mean, that's looks like where things are going, if it's not already here. But that's cool. Where it's not so cool is what that could potentially be used for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about once you put those tools in the world, someone nefarious is going to use it to their advantage, and it's going to blow it all up. Unfortunately, that's just the way humans are. Someone like a Stalin or a Mao or someone along those lines is going to find a way to use that to their advantage, create a message that works and that scares people sufficiently to give it up and to follow them, and then boom, then there's no going back. And those are the type of things that I keep in mind as I try to keep my eyes on history as much as possible, so that I'm keeping I understand what can potentially happen here. And a lot of the times, these good intentions, the good leaders that come in, they always leave these great systems, and it always gets taken advantage of by some nutter. And that's the one thing that I do have the most concern about. And I do personally look forward to the day where I can actually get rid of some of this stuff and then just grow some food and have a much more deep connection with the world and the planet and the water and the trees and all that other stuff, because that's what drives me personally in the future, because I just see this stuff getting a little bit out of control. And also not having the ability to control your own money and have physical contact or physical cash and all this other stuff, and what the ability to control the money flows that could happen with this digital currency. I see a lot of this stuff is quite concerning. Even with the benefits.
Yeah, 100%. And there's certain countries that have tested out certain types of digital currencies that, for example, expire and can only be used to purchase certain things. And in the context of some very public information on some websites of some particular kind of unelected officials around what maybe could happen in 2030 and private property and these things. If that is being tested and then they're being told what is coming, it's just something to maybe keep looking at. And if we take the case that maybe there is more to our experience as human beings, that we can only see a certain amount of things, percentage. You mentioned plant medicines earlier. These are things that have been used for tens of thousands of years, and your pineal gland, when it opens up, like you're open to frequencies and energies and things that are around us. And so one of the karmic laws is that if you're going to do something to someone and you tell them that you did it, you're removed from any accountability for that karmic law. And so when we're being told what they're doing, or whoever, this is what we're doing, and then you see it happening, it's just, I don't know, like if I didn't already have kids, I would think really intently and be really exercise some discernment on what's the world going to look like in 20 years, and is that a good place?
Yeah, absolutely. The conversation about losing the ability to have private property and to own things and all the control that they can have if they, I think we're talking about the same today. Control your purse strings and what you can buy and what you can trade for it. It removes the entire what makes humans human. It's the ability to, I have a service, you've got cash, you want the service, this is the price, we shake a hand and we do it. And this is mine, this is yours, we can trade, we can barter, we can share. I grew up in a small town, so one of my favorite stories about growing up there was that there's 3 farms. Each farmer owns a $1 million piece of kit, and they all, instead of all 3 owning 3 different, or each owning one for themselves, they share. So one guy has a plow, one guy has a mill, one guy has this, and then they basically just all plow each other's fields and use the one piece of kit for everybody, and they share. It's all just done in a handshake, and it's time for time, and that working together, I think we could potentially lose that, and I think that's what makes humans humans, right? I mean, it's the handshake and the sharing.
Yeah, I mean, the connection between charities and large organizations is, it's there, and going into some call it mainstream places that serve coffee, now there's like a tap to donate, and going through drive-throughs, it's often immediately the machine, and so we're already, currency is already digital. The idea that there aren't hard assets, or that there are still hard assets, is, unless you have cash or gold or diamonds or silver, for the most part everything's already digital anyways. And so I welcome the advancement of that, but just where that boundary lies of are we gonna be locked out of our own bank, or and asking the questions almost kind of just dumb to ask, because look at what happened with the trucker situation in Canada, and I'm all for the boundary of things being said or done that aren't in integrity and the right ethics, but it seems like, oh hey, let's just cut people off from accessing their money. It seems a little bit horrifying that if everything's tied up in digital, then we don't have anything to fall back on.
Yeah, that's the amount of people I know that weren't deeply concerned about that is actually one of the most terrifying things that I've seen over the past few years. I mean, the fact that these people that were protesters, whether you agree with them or not, getting shut out of their bank accounts and, going against the government, having the government basically lock them out of life and destroying their credit rating and destroying a lot of that vehicle should not even be there. And the fact that it is and people didn't care is, I find, deeply concerning. I mean, just look at what's happened through history. I mean, it doesn't take much for things to happen. And that, whether you agree politically with the truckers or not, first they use it against the people that you don't like, but eventually it gets used against you. And you just can't be good with that vehicle, whatever it is. I mean, that should be carte blanche. No, government can't shut off your bank account because they don't agree with what you protested. Imagine that happening to the LSD-inducing, drug-inducing hippies back in the Woodstock days. Imagine if that happened there. All those people lost their, fighting against Nixon, lost their bank accounts. I mean, we glorify those protesters, but we don't. We crap on these ones. It's, you may not agree with them, but if people are standing up for what they believe and fighting for, that's what this, the West stands for. And, it disgusted me, actually. Absolutely, it did.
Yeah, and somewhere the culture's changed where it's not okay to ask a question anymore. Like, you just by posing the question, like, oh, is this safe, or oh, is this right, and oh, conspiracy theorist. And again, I don't know with any level of certainty because I just have my intuition and research, but based on the word conspiracy theory of where that word even is and what it even means, and it's like, if you even say it, then you're it. And I don't know, like with what we're doing here with Maple, like we want to kind of exercise the right discernment that we don't end up like having videos taken down, or that we cross boundaries, because these platforms are so incredible. The social media is such an incredible tool that's here for us. And if we take the case of everything we said as maybe being true, then this conversation, there's some advanced AI computer software that's running through keywords and then knowing everything about us already, our bank accounts, our credit history, where we've worked, where we've walked, everything we've done, and that this has been in our pocket for the last 5 years has been recorded somewhere in a data farm, and there's some computer somewhere that knows more about me than I probably know about myself, knows more about you than you know about yourself. And maybe that's true and maybe it isn't, but if just if we took what's more likely or less likely, I'd be on the side of that's more likely. So if that's maybe true, then, you know, who or what is got that information? Because if there was a threat to overthrow the government, like just saying that right now, flag, like goes into some system, the way that if you're on the phone and you say certain words, that, you know, but if that maybe exists, then who or what is controlling that system? And back to the kind of thing, if there were certain bloodlines that wanted to have certain control, you'd want to stay not forefront, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even if the people at Google and YouTube and Facebook have good intentions with your data and they're not using it for nefarious purposes, it doesn't mean the next person isn't, or the person that could take it over, or, you know, something bad happens. Once those tools are there, they can be hijacked. And so that's always the part that concerns me, is that, you know, maybe these people are good, maybe they're not. But if the tool's there and, you know, your phone knows everything about you, that's incredibly valuable to someone who, you know, it doesn't take much, but if there's that one person who wants to do bad things with your data, they can, and they can shut you out of everything right now. And, you know, we got to keep our eyes at least on that, you know, keep ourselves guarded. You got to guard your six at least a little bit.
Yeah. Well, why do you think it's important that we kind of remind ourselves of the freedoms and values that we have today? Well,
I mean, you know, my girlfriend always makes fun of me because I watch a lot of World War II documentaries, and I see that, you know, Nazism, communism did not have as many people associated with it that you would actually like to think. You know, 10% of the population has been able to take over more, you know, been able to take over and control the most people. I have a friend of mine who's an Iranian immigrant, and he told me it's 10% of the people there that actually agree with the government, and the rest follow suit, and they've, you know, they can't do anything. They're being killed in the streets, you know, hanging gay people and all this other stuff. So, you know, that's why I think understanding why, you know, the West has its flaws, but it also has its strengths, and, you know, it's done in, you know, the rule of law, the handshake, and people do what they say they're going to do, and it, and all these other things with the, you know, the truisms and the foundations that are quite, it's beautiful what it's been built, and, you know, the influence that it has, and the fact that people are going all over the world to try and come here and to try and, you know, take advantage of these values. And, you know, I see it being crapped on, you know, all over the place. You know, cruel patriarchy, white privilege, all this other stuff is just so divisive and negative. And, you know, what we've been given is an absolute gift. And the stability that we've had over the past 80 years or whatever it is, has been since World War II, is rare. You know, you look back, you know, through history, peace is not normal. And and the reason why it's normal now, we've all lived that, is because of the values that we have, and people, you know, have followed it. And we lose that at our peril, and a little gratitude for what's been given to us would be nice.
Yeah, 100%. And if we look at Canada as, what is it, the fifth largest oil reserves, I think, or third, and then one of the largest, top five, maybe three, of fresh water, and then all of the other incredible natural resources that we're gifted here. And I mean, of course, the beautiful landscape. If there was someone or some entity that, like, Canada's a prize, right? Like, you'd want to keep that close to the vest. Almost like, no wonder pipelines didn't get built. Like, keep that oil. That's a precious commodity to be controlled and saved and stored. There's certain countries that, you know, cut down their lumber and put it in special sheath and then put it in the ocean because they're concerned about lumber being short in 100 years. And so they're planning 100 years ahead, 200 years ahead, these certain governments. And, you know, I've just noticed and observed in our country, you know, our elected leaders, or really anybody that has a voice, nobody's asking the question like, well, where is Canada? Like, what is Canada? Where are we going to be in 100 years, 200 years? You know, our culture and our values are all mushed, which is great. We're very diverse, and that's all a beautiful thing. But the fundamental vision for our country seems to be that there isn't one, and that there's maybe someone else, something else that's actually got some more control here than we know.
Absolutely, and it's terrifying, and the things that we've been able to accomplish with the peacekeeping and some of the negotiations we've done globally and fighting in the world wars and standing up for good and being that voice and doing things sustainably. I mean, we do have the natural resources, and for a time, there has been some bad with some of the exploitation that's happened there, and I think we're trying to do right with it, and while understanding that we have to maintain our prosperity, or we lose that ability to be a voice globally. And I think the world's better with a strong Canada and a rich Canada, because then we have more to give and we can have more to share. And as we go around the world spreading what we have, I mean, we lose that at our peril. And sure, we've done some things that probably shouldn't have happened, but right now it's beautiful, and we need to really understand that we can't hate what we've done and who we are as a people, and really chop ourselves off at the knee. And I just see that happening too much in the young people, and not having an understanding of what we've done and who we are. And I think it leaves us rife for the picking for bad ideas and for negative ideas, because I just see that coming. And I think a little more appreciation for our forefathers and the sacrifices and this and that would be is duly needed.
Yeah, 100%. And with you mentioned currency going digital, and then as human history, you mentioned World War II. That within a generation or two, it would be easy if there was a desire to have the next 100 years people think a certain way by just basically manipulating history. Like, it's not a new thing that books were burned, that human history was changed, that things were the way the United States was found, the way that in Canada, take our Indigenous population and the story that we're told in elementary school about, and even into junior high and parts of high school about the European settlers coming here and becoming friends and doing trade. But meanwhile, what actually happened was, taking over, putting diseased blankets into certain, and, but in other parts of the world, they just go in and slaughter and take the land. Like, we sort of half did that here without, a full takeover. And then now we have this, incredible social issue. And war has been a part of mankind. Like, I want to take what's yours. That's like inherently who we are as some, the Romans, that war, that, these things is a normal part of human history. And like, it would just be so easy to just lie about what happened, to just change history. And if it's digital, you could just click a button.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're doing that with even Roald Dahl's getting rewritten. Dr. Seuss is getting rewritten to make it wokeified and all this other stuff. I mean, the signs are there that this kind of stuff is happening. And absolutely shining a light on what you discussed, the disease blankets and some of the other stuff, what happened to the Chinese and the railroads and, the residential school issues. And, I had a friend of mine who went through that, and the destruction of that culture is absolutely disgusting. But I don't see anybody alive today that likes it or wants it. And, Canada has become a good place, a beautiful place for the most people. And, like you said, if that were another culture, if that were somewhere in the Middle East, or if that were somewhere in Africa, it would have gone a lot worse. And so acknowledging the mistakes and acknowledging the disgusting aspects of what happened, but also tying it to sort of the good that's been done outside of that and after that. And, yes, that happened 150 years ago, but we also liberated Holland, and there's a reason why we got tulips every year for 60 years and, kicked the Nazis out of Holland. So we did a lot of peacekeeping in other countries that were dangerous. And, there's a lot of, it's muddy, but it's true. And, we're on the right trajectory. And I don't see us getting worse and going back down that path. And I think the only way we get there is by not, rewriting history and just only focusing on the faults and the negative side of it.
Yeah, you mentioned, Stalin or certain Iran or these different places, and where maybe the practices of government weren't optimal, we'll say, for freedom it's like, imagine if they had technology, right? Like that's where, if it's already in our pockets and then a generation from now our youth are going to put it in their body, because it's, who wants to carry a phone when you're just connected all the time? Like that's actually rad, right? Like you're out at a music festival and you just blink and take a photo and text it to your friend. Like that, if it's not already here somewhere somehow, then that is where it's going to go. And that's cool. And that's particularly exciting and connecting us in a whole new way that will accelerate mankind beyond what we could ever imagine. I just have those concerns that if men in particular don't have the integrity and ethics and courage and bravery and the things that are known for men to have, and like we need women, we need women are the most incredible and powerful they give birth to a human, right? Like how amazing are women? But the way that we need women need men to be a certain way and do certain things. And there's some really excellent Canadians, Jordan Peterson being one of them, but I could count on one hand how many strong, masculine, brave men are out, like public figures, for example, that are encouraging and inspiring and showing what it means to be a strong man of high integrity, high ethics, and honest. Like, where are these public figures? Pick a cartoon on Netflix that's been made in the last few years, and their male characters are non-existent. They're sometimes a robot, or they're a bug, or like an off kind of turquoise color that has no sort of masculine traits. And so if that is maybe happening, and we put it in the context of, well, why is it happening? How come in the 90s you turn on a cartoon, or take Power Rangers, for example, that it's like, oh, there's like the red and the green are the like masculine, strong, brave male characters. Put on a cartoon now and try and find strong male masculine characters. They're not there. So like, where'd they go and why?
No, I completely agree, and I'm a huge fan of Jordan Peterson, and he's done unimaginable things to help me to take the next step in my own personal life. And I love one of his quotes. I believe I can attribute this to him or someone that's in his network, is that he talked about women, because they have the gift and also the responsibility of childbirth, they have to grow up. But for men, it's a choice, and I just see a lot of men aren't taking that choice, and they don't see a reason to take that choice. And the positive male role models are few and far between. Especially, I always make fun of the Modern Family. Phil Dunphy is just this goofy beta male, and sure, he's funny, but where's the guy who's going to keep the wolves at bay and do it in a calm, sensitive, but strong and integrity based way? Bravery is one of the most beautiful things out there, and bravery and sacrifice and quiet stoicism. And I just don't see that replicated anywhere. And Peterson, giving voice to that is quite good. And, it's the way we were taught growing up, is that, drive is a negative, as a cancer, trying to, be successful as a cancer, being masculine, the Gillette commercial, the toxic masculinity, but, well, boys will be boys. I mean, just destroying what makes men men. It's no wonder that, we don't have that out there, and we lose that at our peril, because the women need that, the country needs that. I mean, being my ideal sort of in a nutshell for what a strong, capable man is. I love this picture. Is a tatted up, jacked muscle man walking with his daughter's hand in a grocery store wearing a tutu, a princess tutu. I mean, that's how I see it in picture form. Is that, he's strong enough to, do all the other stuff, and he looks capable of violence, but he's wearing a tutu with his daughter and holding her hand. And I just love that.
Yeah, it's a trait that it's like we ran off of boats into war, right? Or even the example that we used around a generation or two ago, that our great-grandparents got on a ship and came across the country to an unknown future, and that bravery that to do that. And then now someone shows up and says, put this substance in your body, and untested and unproven substance, and there's not even a question. And again, I encourage anyone to do that what they think is best, but where is critical thinking? You know, some of the things that I want to teach my boys, like how to swim and defend yourself, fight, and how to critically think. Like, and that is less common than maybe we need as a society.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I love one of the things that Peterson brings up is the mythology around it. So it's like a generation of, the Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. They're sitting there in Never Never Land and they just refuse to grow up. And, they don't have that desire to. And we're taking that from them and we're losing an awful lot of what could be offered there. And, there's some bad parts of, an untested or a male who doesn't develop himself can do a world of poor or bad, but we can also do a world of good as well. And we're only getting the one story, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it scares me, to be honest, because we need that strength and that ability and that drive, and that's how we move forward. And the desire to sacrifice, the call, the hero's myth, for example.
So what's next for you?
What's next? So we're launching a large solar project here in Ontario. That looks like it's going to go and take off here. So it's going to take up a good chunk of my time, and it's hopefully get married and have start my own little family here shortly, and that would be ideal. And build my house and get myself some property so I can have have some connection to a place to build things and grow things and teach my kids how to do these type of things, and balance out the nature and the building and all the tactile stuff with how to live in this world, and take advantage of all the gifts that are out there with the ability to share and travel and all this other beautiful stuff that's out there, and connect with people around the world. And so that's gonna part of the next goals here for me.
Yeah, I mean, what two incredible goals. Do something really innovative in the kind of clean tech energy space. As an entrepreneur, you're gonna make your own way, create jobs, innovate, and then start a family. Like that's I really acknowledge you, Patrick, for that, because it's a tremendous contribution to society to start a business and create jobs, and in something that's good for our environment, and have a family. What great goals. And it sounds like you need a world-class marketing company to support you with your
Well, that absolutely is true, and that's well received, absolutely. And no, I appreciate what you're saying, and it took me a very long time to get there. I was definitely a late bloomer, and I definitely spent a lot of time steeped in vice and avoiding the responsibilities. And to take it back to the Peter Pan story that I was bringing up, I was definitely one of those lost boys and loved playing video games and not doing anything value, and having my drinks and going out on the weekend and doing absolutely nothing of value, getting up at 10, and to be able to move forward now, where if I'm up past 10 o'clock, it's that's a crazy night for me. And to be able to actually, have the ability to raise a family, the desire to do it, and be with the right person to be able to do that, but also to know that I can handle it, in a responsible way, and actually, give back and give them the right tools. It took a long time. It took me a little longer than most, but I think I'm where I need to be, and it was definitely a meandering journey. So looking back, it's interesting to look at.
Yeah, that story with your injury and the opiates and that kind of piece is in a way has been or maybe you'd perceive it as sort of a gift, because now your intuition for your own self-care as you enter into really into the business world, when you talk about building what you're building, that's going to take something as the leader of an organization to know how to manage your health, your self-care, your emotional, mental well-being. When you're going to lead a team and be the leader of not just one organization, but multiple, you need to take care of yourself. And it's the same way we're saying that visceral, ephemeral kind of understanding about what is integrity, what are the right ethics. If you don't learn viscerally how to take care of yourself, you've already learned. So you're set up for maybe the next decade, versus halfway through, alcoholism hits you, and you completely spiral away on pills as you're in the middle of building this incredible business, right?
You're absolutely right, and it comes down to that foundation and setting that up, right? And it took me forever to understand what feelings I was having and how to sort of get over that. And sometimes I need to be around a lot of friends and have a bit of play. Sometimes it means I need to sit quietly and just read a book for a day and just maybe go walk in nature. Sometimes I need to build or to cook something. Sometimes I need to just work really hard at something to get whatever's in me off my mind. And learning how to do that while also eating properly and building the proper foundation for a healthy lifestyle. I mean, going back to my accident, I was very, very jaded, and I hated the medical establishment. I hated my doctor for a time there, and I sat there with myself and I said, I downloaded my entire health and well-being and responsibility to someone else and that's not their job. My health is my job, and I took it off them and I put it on me, and I saw it as my problem to solve. And I haven't gone back to the doctor since because I don't really need to, but my health, my well-being, and my personal, mental, physical health is all my responsibility. And so I was just had it framed completely incorrectly.
Yeah, what a gift, and what an incredible set of values to be able to pass down. With God's grace, you'll have that family and be able to instill that in your kids. And I'll pray for that for you. And hey, I want to just thank you. This is an early project for us. We had identified, call it 2,500 CEOs globally that we thought were leaders in the kind of clean tech environment, kind of entrepreneurial space, and you were on the hit list of our admin at the time, adding 1,000 people on LinkedIn, and then we were experimenting with DMs and different times of day, and a written DM versus a video DM, what gets responded to, who ignores it, who opens it, who doesn't, who accepts the request, and work to collect this data to actually use this tool, LinkedIn, that I have had for 10 years, and for the 2,000 or 3,000 connections, don't really know any of them, wouldn't be able to tell you if they're married, have kids, what exactly it is they do in their business. And so it was a real experiment for us to start to build real community, to start to actually connect with other people and meet them. So yeah, thank you for generously providing your time. And I am curious if you remember the message when I first reached out, if you remember what it said, or what was it, or why did you want to connect with myself and with We Maple?
I do remember you reached out and you talked about having a podcast and trying to focus on Canadian and entrepreneurship, as far as what I understand. But it was an intuition, generally speaking. That's something I'm usually quite I follow quite heavily, and I put a lot of value on. And it just felt like it was the right that we could be friends and we could connect, and there could be a lot of value that we could give to each other. And so I appreciate your message, and I that's basically what it was. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is our project, and we're starting a podcast, we'd love to have you on. And it was a direct message, and yeah, it was I said, hey, what do I have to lose? In our first conversation, I could tell that it was just like having a coffee with a friend, and it was nice and warm, and I really valued it. And so I valued the opportunity to come and speak and, work with other Canadians that are trying to build community, which is something I'm very big on. And, that's the positive side of the social media aspect, is that we grow our communities and we grow our community of like-minded people. And it's really is the benefit that we can have here. And it's something that's desperately needed. And it comes back to that conversation we're having about connection. And, if you see yourself and other people and you connect with other like-minded people, then, it's the world becomes smaller, and you start to, it gives you a little more strength going forward. And I thought that was quite attractive to me.
Oh, that's rad. Thank you for that acknowledgement. And I have a request, which is our next guest, I think, will be either Estonia or Croatia. And I'd like to introduce our next guest through email, and then ask you to please take the microphone and the tripod and mail it to our next guest. Thank you. And yeah, with that said, where can people? Oops, go ahead.
Sorry. 1 second. I will be in Calgary, and I look forward to having a coffee. I'll be in there in May. To have a couple of business meetings there. So I will look you up.
Well, you add a business meeting to the list because you need a high-performing marketing company for all your initiatives, right?
Absolutely, we do. Absolutely, and someone that has shares our core values as people too, right? And it's all about family and connection and doing right. And one of my business partners that I work with he's Irish, and we had a very important business meeting with an investor at the beginning of the year, and he tried to kick out half the company and then just take him and go forward with about $100 million in investment and just fund his company. And he said, "Nah, not doing it. See you later. You're the wrong partner." And so that's the kind of people I work with and line up with, and people whose souls can't be shaken and sold. And so I see that in yourself, and working with more like-minded people that have a similar core value and similar core principles is absolutely part of my life.
Oh, that's an awesome story with that investor and that integrity that takes, and that knock that comes on the door one day. When you get to a certain level, generally the knock will come, and to be able to maintain the ethics and the way of being as a certain kind of man in that scenario, that really takes something.
It is hard. I've had to have had some of those myself, where it's like, well, I'm choosing between my shareholders, my people, and everybody else that have trusted me and invested in me, and giving them a short-term win, but ethically, I think in 20 years we'd all regret it. And having that conversation bounce around your mind between infinite success and future freedom versus the ethics of the decision, and how you see yourself when you're by yourself later on, and also taking money out of people you really care about's pocket. It's it's not easy, and it takes a lot of work to get yourself to that point. And I think it ties really heavily into the conversation we've been having and the values we have.
Yeah, got it. Well, yeah, thanks again, Patrick Hanna. Where can people find you?
You can find me at jobbridgeglobal.com. LinkedIn is, LinkedIn at Patrick Hanna is where you'll find me mostly. EncoGroup.ca is my consulting practice, and, in the clean tech space. But to be honest, I'm not a big social media guy. I don't have Twitter, Facebook, or any of that other stuff, just because for me it just doesn't, that's why I need a marketing firm, because I just don't, I haven't personally, I get sucked into some of the bad conversations, and you read things and it just kind of, even through scrolling through LinkedIn, can be poisonous at times for your perspective. So you want to look me up, I'd be happy to reach out to anybody that sees value in the conversation we're having on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best place at this point. But
excellent. So what I heard is arrange a Tesla to pick us both up, film the whole thing, and take a rip out and see some Alberta landscape. And
maybe play a quick 18.
A quick which?
A quick 18 holes.
Oh yeah, I'll swing the sticks. I'll drive the cart though.
That sounds great, and then I would love that if that's the way it is, and I'll bring my Irish associates, because they had a little more. If you know much about the Irish, they had a lot of color to every conversation, and it would get you some good following out there, because it would be entertaining.
Oh, that's tremendous. Our main associate, or my partner here, he grew up just outside of Dublin, so it'll be a hit. So yeah, stay tuned for episode 7 or whenever this happens on Wee Maple, because Patrick and I will hit the skate park and go and swing the sticks on the links.
Absolutely. I think I would embarrass myself as much on the skate park as you would on the golf course, perhaps, because I lack that skill, but I would try for sure, as long as I had a good helmet.
Right on, Patrick. Okay, man. Well, have a great weekend. Thanks for connecting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been a great time, Matt. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, you too. Peace.